So hi guys, this is the second lecture about the cellular injury. So in this lecture we will study the etiology of cellular injury, causes of cellular injury. So the first cause is the inflammation, and inflammation includes two things. It may be through the infection, it may be through the chronic inflammatory states. First one is through infection, and this infection may be because of the fungi, bacteria and virus. Fungi, bacteria and virus, etc. So this infection is because of the fungi, bacteria and virus, and the infection in the cell can cause the cellular injury. The example for this infection is that pneumonia. This pneumonia is an infection in the lungs, and this pneumonia can progress to the cellular injury and it cause the cancer, it can cause the injury of the lung. So it was about pneumonia and it was about infection. So the second inflammation is through the chronic inflammatory states. Chronic inflammatory state examples for the autoimmune system. What happens in autoimmune system? In case of autoimmune system will produce the antibodies against its own body. It will produce the antibodies against its own system. So it will produce the antibodies against its own system, and we can take its example as hypersensitivity. So this is what about chronic inflammation is the autoimmune response. It will produce the antibodies against its own system, and second thing is it may be the hypersensitivity, sensitivity to very low cold and very low warm. So second etiology of cellular injury is the nutritional deficiency or excess. That may be the vitamins, maybe the nutrients. So vitamins may be deficiency, may be excess. Because of this, it can cause cellular injury. Let's suppose that I would like to give an example that vitamin A deficiency will cause the night blindness. And also, vitamin A deficiency also causes night blindness, and also the autoimmune system. It also causes the premature cells of immune system. Second is this, and because of the vitamin C deficiency, it can cause the disease scurvy. And because of B12 and folate vitamins deficiency, it causes the anemia. So these are the cellular injury. I gave you 2-3 examples. Let's note that. In case of nutritional deficiency or excess, it can cause the cellular injury. Let's suppose that vitamin A deficiency will cause the night blindness, and vitamin C deficiency will cause the disease scurvy, and vitamin B12 and folate deficiency will cause the anemia in our body. So the next cause of the cellular injury is trauma. Trauma is a physiological stress. This is the physiological stress. So this is the physiological. When physiological trauma, maybe there is a bone, maybe the gunshot fire. In this case, trauma also can cause a cellular injury. In case of gunshot fire, in case of burning. Second is the genetic mutation. What happens in this case? Genetic mutations. The word mutation has been used. When there are the mutations in the genes, then it will not production of proteins. No protein production. When protein will not form, then cell undergo injury. So genetic mutation also can cause the injury. The fifth one is the chemical agents, like that drugs, poisons, smoking and alcohol. These are the chemical agents, and these chemical agents also can cause the cellular injury. The sixth one is hypoxia, which is the most important of the etiology of cellular injury. The most common is hypoxia. Let's suppose that hypoxia. Hypo means less. And oxia, let's suppose it's take from the oxygen. So what does it mean? Low oxygen deliveries to tissues. When oxygen will be less delivered to tissues, then it is called hypoxia. Now we will discuss that how this hypoxia causes the cellular injury. How this hypoxia has the ability to cause the cellular injury. Let's suppose that these tissues, why it goes to the cellular injury? Because of hypoxia. Hypoxia is the oxygen deficiency. When oxygen will be decreased, then there will be the no oxidative phosphorylation. Oxidative phosphorylation. What's the role of oxygen in oxidative phosphorylation? Oxygen acts in the electron transport chain as a final acceptor of electron. And during this oxidative phosphorylation or electron transport chain, there is a production of ATP. When less oxygen, then oxygen will not act as a final acceptor, because final acceptor is the oxygen. When oxygen will be low, then oxidative phosphorylation will be low. When oxidative phosphorylation will be low, then ATP production will be low. And when ATP will be low, then cell undergo the cell injury. So in this way, hypoxia causes the cell injury. So now we are discussing about the hypoxia causes. What are the causes of hypoxia? The first cause of hypoxia is the ischemia. We will discuss three causes, but the first one is ischemia. Ischemia is the most common cause of the hypoxia. Most common cause of hypoxia is ischemia. It can be an exam question. That what is the most common cause of hypoxia? That's ischemia. So first point about this, that decreased blood flow through an organ. Through an organ, decreased blood flow. Let's suppose that I will discuss it in this form, that let's suppose that this is an arteriole and this is an organ. Just a simple diagram, and this is a vein. Let's suppose that this is an artery, this is a vein, and it's an organ. So what is this? That decreased blood flow through an organ. First, this artery will come. So here may be a thrombus formation or arteriosclerosis, like that. So in this case, blood flow will be decreased. When blood flow will be decreased, then it clearly means that oxygen will decrease. So decreased blood flow towards organ will decrease. And the second point is that there will be also block in the vein. When block will be the vein, then blood outflow will not. The blood outflow will not, and blood will accumulate is here. This is also cause the ischemia, and ischemia is the cause of hypoxia. Decreased blood flow through an organ in this shape, and there will be a decrease in the blood flow that will cause hypoxia. The next cause of the ischemia, so the next one is about ischemia, it may be the cardiopulmonary failure. What is cardiopulmonary failure? Cardiopulmonary failure is just about the cardiac or maybe the lung disease. Because of the cardiac or lung disease, or we can say cardiac or lung failure, it also can cause the decreased blood flow through the organ, through the tissues. So blood flow will decrease, and this is also called the ischemia. And ischemia is the cause of hypoxia. So a little thing about ischemia. We will discuss about the second cause of the hypoxia. The second cause of hypoxia is the hypoxemia. There is different hypoxia and hypoxemia. We will discuss that. What is that? Hypo means less. Oxy stands for oxygen, and mia stands for blood. So what we will give the definition to hypoxemia, that low partial pressure of oxygen in blood. The partial pressure of oxygen will be low in the blood. The partial pressure of oxygen in blood will be less than 60 mmHg, and SaO2 will be less than 90%. So what is this? What is this point? To understand this point, I would like to give you some points like that. We're going to discuss some points that. Let's suppose that FiO2. I'm just writing that, I will explain it. Capital AO2 and P smaller AO2 that moves toward the SaO2. So I will not. So listen to me carefully, that FiA2 is the partial pressure of oxygen in environment. Partial pressure of oxygen in environment. And what is this P capital AO2? It's the partial pressure of oxygen in lungs. And what is that PaO2? Is the partial pressure of oxygen in blood, in the arterioles. And what is this SaO2? Is the concentration of oxygen in hemoglobin. So now I will discuss this first. So when there is a partial pressure of oxygen in the environment is high, then this partial pressure will help to move the oxygen from environment to lungs. So oxygen is in line because of the partial pressure of oxygen in the environment. So now this is in the lungs. So the lungs, the partial pressure of oxygen in lungs will cause the squeeze of oxygen from lungs to blood, from lungs to arteriole, from alveoli to arteriole. So PaO2 will cause movement of oxygen, squeezing of oxygen from lungs to blood. So now it is in blood. And in blood, its partial pressure is P capital AO2. and this pressure will cause the squeezing of oxygen from blood to red blood cells, and red blood cells have hemoglobin, so we can say that partial pressure of oxygen helps to move the oxygen, squeeze of oxygen from blood to the hemoglobin of red blood cells. So this was about that. This is the normal case happens. So what is that hypoxemia? This was the normal case, but what happens in case of hypoxemia? Let's suppose that the first case. First case is that high altitude. When a person is at high altitude, then at high altitude the environment partial pressure of oxygen will be low. When this will be low, then automatically less oxygen will come in the lungs. When less oxygen will become in the lungs, then the partial pressure of oxygen in the lungs will also be low. When partial pressure of oxygen in the lungs will be low, then less oxygen will be go in the blood. So it clearly means that partial pressure of oxygen in blood also will be low. When partial pressure of oxygen will be less in the blood, then less numbers of oxygen will go towards the hemoglobin. So it clearly means that the concentration of blood will also be low. So it was the first point, how the partial pressure of the oxygen in blood, blood loss. It's about that high altitude, so low environmental partial pressure of oxygen, it will cause the low lung pressure, partial pressure of oxygen in lungs, and it will cause the low partial pressure of oxygen in blood, and it will cause the low concentration of oxygen in the hemoglobin. The next point is that, the next point is very good. It's about the more concentration of more partial pressure of carbon dioxide in lungs, because capital A stands for lungs. So more partial pressure of carbon dioxide in lungs. In lungs, carbon dioxide and oxygen must be in balance. When this balance will be disturbed, then the function will also be disturbed. So if partial pressure of carbon dioxide in lungs will increase as compared to partial pressure of oxygen in lungs, then it will cause the decrease of the partial pressure of oxygen. When partial pressure of carbon dioxide will increase, then partial pressure of oxygen will decrease. Then partial pressure of oxygen in lungs will decrease, then automatically will decrease the partial pressure of oxygen in blood, will cause the less concentration of oxygen in the hemoglobin. So the second point about partial pressure of carbon dioxide increasement. The third point may be the thick curve. What is this thick curve? The third point is the thick curve. It's about saying that if the wall between the lungs and between the alveolar wall, this wall, alveolar wall may be thicker. If this wall will be thicker, then less oxygen will move from lungs alveoli to the blood arteriole. So what happens is, this pressure partial, this is normal, but the alveoli wall is thick. When this wall is thick, then it will cause the low movement of, then it will cause the low oxygen will come in the blood, so PaO2 will decrease, and PaO2 will be decreased, and concentration of hemoglobin for carrying oxygen will also be low. So what is the example of thick curve? I would like to give an example of thick curve is fibrosis. Sorry, I would like to give the example of this. This example is the interstitial fibrosis. Interstitial fibrosis. Sorry, it's not fine, right? So, what is the example of thick curve? Interstitial fibrosis. What happens in this case? Interstitial fibrosis. In this case, the wall of alveoli will become thick. But what is the example of PaO2? Its example is hypoventilation. Its example is hypoventilation. What happens in hypoventilation? In case of hypoventilation, there will be the accumulation of carbon dioxide in the lungs. When accumulation of carbon dioxide in the lungs, then oxygen will be low. And this accumulation is because carbon dioxide will not blown out through the lungs, will not blown out. So third cause of hypoxia. So it was second cause hypoxemia, and third cause of the hypoxia is the decreased oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, and blood capacity to carry the oxygen will decrease, and it may be because of the hemoglobin loss. Hemoglobin may be lost in blood cells, or the dysfunction of hemoglobin. What is the normal function of hemoglobin? Let's say that hemoglobin binds with the oxygen, because oxygen comes from environment to lungs, lungs to blood, blood to red blood cells, and red blood cells. Hemoglobin binds to oxygen, and it binds to 4 molecules of oxygen. It's normal case, 4 molecules, 2 multiplied by 2, 4 atoms, 2 molecules and 4 atoms, and it will give to the tissues. It will provide to the tissues. So, What happens in this case? When hemoglobin lost, then less oxygen will be supplied to the tissue. So carrying capacity of the blood will decrease. When hemoglobin lost, then it means that carrying capacity of blood will decrease, and then it will go less toward the tissues. So it will cause the hypoxia. So what are the causes of decreased oxygen carrying capacity of blood? The first cause is anemia. What happens in case of anemia? What happens in case of anemia? In case of anemia, what happens? In case of anemia, decrease in total red blood cell mass. The total red blood cells will decrease. When red blood cells will decrease, then what will happen? Red blood cells decrease. It clearly does mean that hemoglobin will decrease. When hemoglobin will decrease, then less oxygen will go towards that. Less oxygen will provide to tissues. Less oxygen will be provided to tissues. It was as simple that. What happens in case of anemia? In case of anemia, decrease in total red blood cell mass. When red blood cells will decrease, then hemoglobin will decrease. We will discuss here in detail. In this, what happens? Partial pressure of oxygen in blood will be normal, because there is no problem in the partial pressure of oxygen in environment. So it will be normal. It also will be normal. So PaO2 will be normal, and SaO2 will also be normal. SaO2 is also normal. What happens is, what is SaO2? First we must know that. SaO2, later, what percentage? What percentage of oxygen binds to hemoglobin? This is just about the definition of SaO2, that what percentage of oxygen binds to hemoglobin. Now I will prove that. This is normal, and why this is normal, but there is also anemia. There is a hypoxia, decreased carrying capacity of blood. Look at this. Let's suppose that. What happens in this case? In this case, let's suppose that there are 3 molecules of hemoglobin. 3 molecules of hemoglobin. And each molecule contains how many atoms of oxygen? 4. So it will contain 4, it also will contain 4, and it also will contain 4. So what does it mean? SaO2 is normal. PO2 was already normal because FiO2 is normal. And SaO2 is also normal. Why normal? Because each hemoglobin is carrying 4 atoms, which is the normal case. So SaO2 is normal. Concentration of oxygen in each hemoglobin is normal. But what happens in case of anemia? In case of anemia, decrease in total red blood cells. When red blood cells will decrease, then it clearly does mean that hemoglobin will decrease. So this hemoglobin will disappear. Hemoglobin has been disappeared, so now oxygen will disappear, but will decrease, but SaO2 will be normal because hemoglobin has been disappeared. When hemoglobin has been disappeared, then it will cause the hypoxia, because now there is a less hemoglobin, but SaO2 is normal. So this was found about anemia, the first cause of decreased oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. So the third cause, which causes the decrease of the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, is the carbon monoxide poisoning. What is this carbon monoxide poisoning? What happens in this case? In this case, because carbon monoxide binds with the hemoglobin more rapidly than O2, than oxygen. Carbon monoxide will bind with the hemoglobin rapidly as compared to O2, and this is 100 times more. This is 100 times more ability to bind with the hemoglobin as compared to oxygen. So in this case, what will happen? In this case, partial pressure of oxygen in the blood will be normal, but concentration of oxygen in the hemoglobin will decrease. Why this case happens? Why this case happens? Because look at this. How is this case? We can prove it. Let's suppose that this is a hemoglobin, and one hemoglobin contains 2 molecules of oxygen here and 2 molecules of oxygen here. Let's suppose that 4 molecules. But when here is a carbon monoxide in the blood, then carbon monoxide will bind at the place of oxygen. So here will bind the carbon monoxide. 2 carbon monoxide has been bound inside of 2 oxygen. So now there is a 2 carbon monoxide and 2 oxygen atoms. So the normal condition there must be the 4 oxygen atoms, but in this case 2 oxygen atoms. When 2 oxygen atoms, then concentration of oxygen in the hemoglobin has been decreased, so SaO2 will be decreased. So in this case, the third point about carbon monoxide poisoning is exposure includes smoke from fires and cars. So smoke from fires and exhaust of the cars cause the carbon monoxide in the environment, and through environment carbon monoxide enters our lungs, and from lungs it enters our blood. And when it goes in the blood, it will attach with the it will attach with the hemoglobin, and will decrease the SaO2. So next, how we can find this? Classical definition is cherry red color of the skin. This is cherry red color of skin. Why this cherry red color of skin? Because in the blood there is a carbon monoxide, and this carbon monoxide will show reflection. This carbon monoxide will show reflection. And reflection in light. Then it will carbon monoxide will show reflection in the light, then it will give the color cherry red color of the skin. So this is the clinical finding, a classical finding of this disease, carbon monoxide poisoning. The next thing about carbon monoxide poisoning is that early sign of the carbon monoxide poisoning is the headache. It is very, very important for exam. In exams come question that what is the early sign of the carbon monoxide poisoning? That is the headache. So next, this is so simple. What is the second? What is the next one? Next one is that carbon monoxide poisoning can lead to coma and even cause the death. Because when carbon monoxide will increases, then oxygen will decreases. And when oxygen will be decreases, then tissues will not get oxygen and will cause the injury of the whole cells. So next, the third point is methemoglobinemia. Methemoglobinemia is the third point which decrease the oxygen carrying capacity of blood. How is this possible? What is this? What is methemoglobinemia? This is the iron in heme is oxidized from Fe plus 2 to Fe plus 3. What happens normally? And normally hemoglobin has two cases, Fe plus 2 and also in small amount, Fe plus 3. But plus 3 in small amount and plus 2 in a great amount. And plus 2 will bind with oxygen. Let's say so simple, plus 2 O2. But FeO2 will not bind with oxygen. So what happens in this case? In this disease, what happens? Iron in his heme is oxidized from FeO2 to Fe plus 3. So Fe plus 2 will be decreased. When Fe plus 2 will decrease, and Fe plus 3 will increase, and Fe plus 3 will not bind with oxygen. So oxygen will decrease. So oxygen will decrease. So carrying capacity of hemoglobin to contain oxygen will decrease. What next one that? Partial pressure of oxygen will be normal, but concentration of oxygen in the hemoglobin will be decreased, same like that. Now there is a Fe3 plus iron in the hemoglobin, when Fe3 plus iron in the hemoglobin, so it will not bind with oxygen. So first we see that in the normal case it bind with the 4 molecules of oxygen, but now in this case Fe plus 2 has been changed to Fe plus 3, so less molecules will bind with that. Let's suppose that 2 will bind. When 2 will bind, then it still does mean that SaO2 has been decreased. Next one is that seen with oxidative stress. What is this oxidative stress? Oxidative stress are the agents. These are the agents which cause the oxidation of Fe plus 2 into Fe plus 3. It will oxidize the iron from Fe plus 2 to Fe plus 3. These are the agents. An example, when it will be changed into plus 2 to plus 3, then it will cause the decrease SaO2. And examples of the natro and sulfur drugs. So natro and sulfur drugs also are the oxidative stress that cause the oxidation from Fe plus 2 to Fe plus 3. And also in newborns. What is this case in newborns? What does it mean? It does mean that I have just earlier said that in our body there is a large amount of Fe plus 2, but there is also small amount of Fe plus 2. When there is a small amount of Fe plus 3, but we have some enzymes in our body. We have some enzymes in our body which change these Fe plus 2 state into Fe plus 2. Fe plus 3 will be changed into Fe plus 2, and Fe plus 2 will bind with oxygen and will cause increased oxygen capacity. Not only in our case. So, but what happens in case of newborns? In case of newborns, this mechanism may be poor. These enzymes will not act on the Fe plus 3 concentration, and Fe plus 3 will not change into Fe plus 2, in which case Fe plus 3 will increase. When they will increase, then oxygen carrying capacity of the hemoglobin will decrease. So it may be because in newborns enzymes will not may be active. Second is the classical finding of this methemoglobinemia is that classical finding is with chocolate colored blood. The color will be the chocolate. Sorry, the color of the blood will be chocolate. So simple. So easy that. So next part is that it's about that treatment. What is the treatment of methemoglobinemia? Its treatment is 4-methylene blue. This is a drug which we use in this disease. What happens in this disease? What will do this drug? This drug will help the changement of Fe+3 into Fe+2, and Fe+2 will normally bind with the oxygen and it will cause the SaO2 towards normal. So now SaO2 will be normal and disease will be overcome. What happens? Treatment will get there. The 4-methylene blue will cause, it will help the changement of Fe+2, it will reduce it and it will cause the Fe+2 formation, and then Fe+2 will again bind with oxygen and SaO2 will be normal. So we were just discussing about the hypoxia. These are all about the causes of hypoxia. So how this hypoxia causes cell injury? What happens? Basically hypoxia impairs oxidative phosphorylation. When there will be the less oxygen will be the no oxidative phosphorylation. When no oxidative phosphorylation or less oxidative phosphorylation, it will result in the decreased ATP concentration. Results in the ATP concentration decrease. When concentration of ATP decrease, then following 3 steps we have to determine. We will discuss following these 3 steps on the basis of ATP. So these are the sodium. First one is the sodium potassium pump. Sodium potassium pump work on the basis of ATP. It uses the ATP. And what they work? The sodium potassium pumps cause sodium inside of the cell. So sodium it will cause the outside of the cell sodium through against its concentration gradient. Already sodium is more inside the cell, but through these pumps we will move out the sodium out of the cell and potassium inside the cell. We will move in the potassium through these pumps. But what happens when there is a no ATP? When there is a no ATP or less ATP, then these pumps will not work. When these pumps will not work, then sodium will not go outside. Sodium will not go outside. Then sodium will be collected in our body. So sodium will be accumulated. Sodium will be accumulated in the cell. When sodium will be accumulated in the cell, then you know that sodium is an effective solute. So it will attract, it will pull the water. So water will also come in the cell and it will cause swelling. It will cause swelling, and you know that swelling is the first sign of the cellular injury. So in this case, sodium will be accumulated in a cell, and sodium accumulation will be flowed by the water and it will cause swelling, which is the first sign of cellular injury. The second part is calcium pump. What happens in this case? Calcium pump. Normally calcium will be low in our cytosol. In our cytoplasm or cytosol, calcium level must be very, very low in normal case, because this calcium activates some enzymes. Which can destroy the organelles. Examples are the mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum. Those organelles which are being destroyed by these enzymes which are activated by calcium. So what should we do in normal case? That sodium concentration must be very, very low in the cytoplasm. But in this case, what happens? In this case, there is a no ATP. When there is a no ATP, then pumps will not work. When pumps will not work, then sodium, we can't move the sodium outside of the body. So sodium will be accumulated. Sodium will be accumulated in our body, in our cell. Sorry, so not sodium, calcium. Calcium will be accumulated in our cell. When calcium will be accumulated, and calcium will activate these enzymes, and these enzymes will cause the breakdown of the organelles, and it is also a sign of cell injury. The third point is aerobic glycolysis. Aerobic glycolysis clearly does mean from the name aerobic, so it works on the basis of oxygen. When there is a no oxygen, then aerobic glycolysis will not take place. When there is a no aerobic glycolysis, then it takes place anaerobic glycolysis. Anaerobic glycolysis. So in case of anaerobic glycolysis, there will be the two cases. First case, less production of ATP as compared to aerobic glycolysis. First part is the less production of ATP, and second part about the anaerobic glycolysis is the more production of lactic acid. Lactic acid is an acid, so it will decrease the pH. It will decrease the pH of the cell. When the pH of the cell will be decreased, then it will cause the precipitation of DNA and proteins, precipitation of DNA plus proteins. And this precipitation of DNA proteins is a sign of the cellular injury also. What is the third one? Third one was aerobic glycolysis. What happens when there is no oxygen, then no aerobic glycolysis, no aerobic glycolysis, and anaerobic glycolysis. In case of anaerobic glycolysis, two cases was ATP will also decrease, and it will also cause the production of lactic acid. And this lactic acid will cause the decrease of the pH. When pH will decrease, and it will cause the precipitation of DNA and proteins. So these were the third points through which hypoxia can cause the cellular injury. So this was about the etiology of the cellular injury. So thank you so much guys. In the next lecture we will talk about the third topic of cellular injury.